get started. Off the side of the camera.
Oh, actually, if you want to watch that screen, there you go.
Okay, we're going to get started with the seminar today. Kayla Womack is going to provide us with the opening prayer.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful that we can be here to hear from Central Homes. We're grateful for this time that we have to be at this university. We ask thee to bless us that we may be able to have thy spirit to be able to focus, and that thy spirit will be able to help us learn. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
So by way of announcements, before we get into the seminar, we have an information session which is going to double as the ASC opening social as well tonight, starting at 5:30. That's in this room, and we'll go from there. And then for the ACMS social as well, after that point, we'll proceed to splatters for paintballing. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. Moving on into today's presentation, we have Central Homes here. We have Dale Wills, Tate Baxter, and Baron Wills. And so just a little bit of background on Dale Wills is that Dale has been here on campus before. He's done a lot of recruiting and has worked with many of you, and you've seen the flyers around. But in the late night, Dale Wills is married, and he has 6 children, one of which currently attends BYU-Idaho. In the late 90s, Dale was the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a Utah-based home builder. During this time, he orchestrated the company's growth by over 300% and profitability by 30% in a 2-year period. Over the next 4 years, Dale acquired several Radio Shack franchises, one of which was recognized as the largest and most profitable Radio Shack franchise in the company. Dale has held elected position on City Council in Utah, as well as the chairman of a large water users group representing a large population in Utah. While serving as the chairman, he successfully negotiated a $320 million water contract with the Department of Interior, at a significant discount to neighboring states. In 2003, Dale took over a small home builder in Utah, and over the next 2 years grew the company by 1,100% and reduced cycle times by 50%. In 2005, this company was sold to another builder, and Dale went to work for a national private home builder. In 2006, Dale was asked to move to Minnesota to help with the turnaround of the struggling division of a national home builder, as well as to help expand the company into the Midwest and East Coast. Due to the recession, the home builder stopped expansion in 2011, and Dale decided to venture back on his own and started Central Homes. Over the next 5 years, Central Homes has developed and built over $140 million in real estate. Central Homes has been recognized as Minnesota's largest privately held home builder. Central Homes actively builds homes and develops land in Minnesota. It's forecasted that Central Homes will do in excess of $40 million in revenue in 2017. So let's put our hands together for Dale Wills and his team.
I shouldn't have embellished that so much. That sounded really good. The thought just occurred to me. Thank you for that prayer. Of in business, you just don't have those opportunities, and what a phenomenal blessing. This is a now on the development phase. In your due diligence, there's a lot that you need to do. In this particular case, there's some wetlands up in this area. You've got to do what's called a wetland delineation. What do we need to do here? Can we disrupt these wetlands? You need to do a phase 1 environmental, and that's to identify, is there problems? Do we have potential oil in the soils? Do we have asbestos in buildings? In that phase 1, there is a school here. We knew there would be asbestos. So that was part of knowing. And that phase 1 also determined that there was some oil in the grounds over this area. So then you do what's called a phase 2, which is a more in-depth research of what's going on. So we're looking into that. The next thing, which we're going to put our focus on for the next little bit, is soils. They'll do a boring in the soils that'll go down, and they'll identify what types of soil do you have. Is this soil going to support a house? Is it going to support a road? Can we actually do this? So we did our soils testing, and this next slide shows us where we did them. So you're going to take a few spots, and you're going to take these spots as where they did each of these soil borings. So you can see them in different locations. We got the report back, and it showed all of these being fine. All but one of them. And it showed that, we could have as much as a foot being a problem, which is pretty typical, that you'll need to take the top foot out. Quite often, you'll take and scrape that off, you'll set it aside, do the development, and then you bring it back in for topsoil. So that's pretty common. We weren't concerned with the 6 to 12 inches. However, this one here told us that we have 18 to 20 feet of problems. So I've got soils that are 18 to 20 feet down that you better not put a road or a house on, otherwise it's, the wise man built his house upon the rock? This was not a rock. So now we've got a problem. All the rest of them are fine, but this is a pretty large area. If we're putting 63 houses in here, you can imagine the size of this property. So you've got a pretty good distance between these borings. What we do know is we have a problem with one of them. Is our next slide, sorry about this. The next one is the draft. It now shows what are we dealing with. So this column here, you guys probably can't see this in the back. This column shows the depths and what are we dealing with. So you come here and you can see at 1.2 feet we've got sandy soils and clay. In here you're showing at 9 feet we've got a little bit trace of gravel, some sandy lean clay, but this is where you get into the problem. Right here we have 18 feet, we've got peat. Peat, you guys have heard of peat moss. If you've ever touched peat moss, it's just fluffy. People put it in soils to allow air to get to the roots to grow plants. Well, if you've got air in soils that are 18 feet down, you've got a problem. And it was deposited from swamp deposit. So we now know that at 18 feet deep, we've got soils that are not compactable, and we know it came from swamp deposits. That's what we now know. I've got this for every single one of those borings, and all of the rest of them say you're fine. You've got, as you go down, you're going to have different soils. You're generally not going to go 20 feet and see the exact same thing in this general area. So it's not uncommon that you've got sand and now we've got gravel and we've got different deposits at different levels. Where we're concerned is we've got the peat that's there. So what do? We're under contract. Go back 3 slides. Stop. We're about right here is where we've got the problem. That's about where our house sits. We've got a boring over here that's okay, and a boring over here that's okay, and one over here that's okay. Now, you're me, what are we going to do about this? Yes?
Park there or something? Could you put green space there?
Put green space. I love it. That's a great suggestion. What else can we do? Yes?
Could you move the pond that you have in the center more towards that area?
This pond here?
Yeah.
Move it. I love that suggestion. So let's move the pond here. Let's do a green space. Both excellent suggestions. What else can we do as a company? What do we need to do?
You need to find out how big the area is that there's the block.
How big is the area? We need to identify what area is impacted by this. Excellent. Any other input, thoughts? What should we do here? The next thing we did is all three things that were said. You guys are all hired if you're looking for a job. I love it. We said, okay, what's the area though? If we have, go back to our draft. If we know we've got here swamp deposit that's down 18 feet deep, how did it get there? So we started researching. This next slide shows us the research that we found. We started researching, okay, we don't have the technology, they didn't have the technology very long ago of what we have today, but we were able to find some geological surveys, some different information. As you can see here, there's an old pond. We've got a stream bed coming through here. We said, okay, we could have a much wider spread problem. However, it might be limited to just an area. We've spent at this point probably $15,000 to $20,000 in just the environmental phase 1 and the soil. So we've spent a lot of money and time. We think it's limited to an area, but we have no idea. We know there's other areas it's fine. So we said, all right, let's take these ideas that these three guys said, which is exactly what we were thinking, is we know it can be limited, but we need to do exactly what you said. We need to now go in and identify, is this a bigger area? Is it a greater problem? Or is it limited to a very small area that we can contain? So we did exactly what you suggested. We said, we're going to go in and now, based on that, we're going to do a bunch of more borings. I don't have each draft in the interest of time. We went through, and you can see all these green dots are, there's a clock. I don't wear a watch, and my only watch is my phone, which is not on me. Each one of these green dots represents additional soil borings we decided to do. Let's identify the problem. So we did this one here, no issues at all. This one here's 18 feet. This one's 18 feet. This one's 7, 14, 17. This one's still fine. So that reflects what we had discovered based on the historical pictures and images we were able to find, is that you've got a stream bed that had come through like this. So we feel pretty comfortable that this area is fine. We feel pretty comfortable this area is fine, but we've got an issue here. 18 feet of soil is not cheap to move. It's very expensive to excavate down that deep. What you have to do when you have 18 feet of soil that's got to come out is you have to pull all that soil out. You now need to bring in 18 feet of compactable soils. And as you put that soil in, you need to compact it in lifts. So depending on the type of soil and the location, in this area, typical is about 6-inch lifts. You've got to put in 6 inches. You've got to compact it. You're going to bring in 6 inches. You're going to compact it, and you keep doing that. As you can imagine, this is not a cheap process we're talking about. So we now know where it's limited to. If you can vision what we have a little bit of a pond here, but we have houses and roads all through this area. And the cost to excavate that will exceed the cost we had offered to buy the property. So at this point, which can happen, we've got other examples that we've done this with other cities, but at this point, for us to make this a viable project, the city now needs to give me the land for free plus a little bit of money. Because the cost for me to improve this area is so expensive I can't do it. So now back to you guys, what do we do?
Suggest that they agree to less housing and make that area green space maybe?
Fantastic, I love that. Less housing and green space. That works. What else could we do? How do we resolve this problem we have? Yes?
Could you drive friction piles down for your house on friction piles? Or is that more expensive than digging it out?
We could do that. That is possible. In this case, it would outweigh the cost of removing the soils. And then you also have the road issue. But yes, that is a great option. We did not put that on our list only because we know the cost, what the cost difference. We've done an estimate. Excellent idea. That's something that should be on your list. What else should we be looking at and considering here?
Just like what the other person said, you can move, you have 2 ponds, you can move both of the ponds to the left and reformat your layout.
I love that. So put our ponds up into this area here. Okay? I've got a purchase price for 63, I don't remember if anybody remembers the math, a lot of units. Am I going to get the same number of units with your suggestions? So now what do I do?
Apartment building, maybe?
Apartment buildings. Okay?
I'd say propose a new plan to the city,
Propose a new plan to the city. Okay? And what would that plan look like?
like less housing, more green.
Less housing, more green? I love that. I saw a hand in the back.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Same thing?
You could also make less of the single housing, more of the compact, but not wall-to-wall housing.
Less single, more. I love that. Yes.
Kind of along that line, you could suggest duplexes.
Duplexes. Okay?
On a certain part of the neighborhood.
Great suggestion.
So like, how much money would you lose? It's like, hypothetically, if you moved all the soil and you made all those houses on it, would it be worth the cost to have those houses to have, you know what I'm saying, like sell those houses, or would it be cheaper to just have less houses? Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So if we, yes, no, I think what you're saying is we need to do a cost analysis.
Yes. Like,
Does it make sense to excavate and get more houses,
Yeah.
or do you just abandon part of the area and have less houses?
Yes.
I love that. So do the cost analysis. That's exactly something we need to do. That is on our list. What else? Yes.
Something just to add on to that point of not having many houses, if you had a larger green space, more of a park, your property value might be able to go up, you might be able to sell your house for more.
So yes, so if we have more amenities, is there a greater value? Do you want to live in a subdivision that has greater amenities? I love that idea.
Have to haggle the purchase price with the city.
Go to talk about the purchase price of the city. Yes.
Can you shorten some of the lots and that would make you be able to have more lots, more houses?
So shrink our lots, get more houses, greater density. Great suggestion.
So if that's gonna be like community green space, couldn't you give that portion to the city to develop and then you develop all the land around?
So community green space to develop. I love that. Yes.
So if you're moving one of the ponds or like one of the other green spaces, couldn't you just move the houses where the pond used to be or would be?
Yes. Now, one thing, keep in mind, you're exactly right. These, I mean, I hope you guys are all interviewing tomorrow. I mean, these are really, really good suggestions. We've got this, the pond was approximately here. We know this is good soils. So we've got several suggestions. Let's do green space. Let's expand ponding. Let's put it up in here. One of our challenges is that we can all see we've got a much larger area that's impacted than what this storm pond would be. So effectively, what we have to do, as many of you said, is we've got to increase density, so get smaller lots to get the number of units, or we've got to decrease the number of units, which either way is going to either impact our financial model or it's going to impact what the city wanted. So the city does not want any attached product. They don't want anything that could potentially become a rental. So, okay, now what do we do? How do we do this? Many of you suggested we could take the product that we had up front and just take the balance of it, do various things like that. These are all really excellent ideas. What we do know is we've got to go to the city and do something. We've got to propose something new. Now, the risk we're running is the city can cut bait. They can say, hey, we're done. Because what we've got currently isn't going to work. I can't afford to pay them what they're asking for the property any longer because I'm not having the same type of products. I'm not getting the same densities, or I might have the same densities, but I've got to go back and propose something very different than what they had envisioned originally. So I've got to go to the city. So this could be a little bit of a delicate thing because the city council, you got to convince 5 people of your vision, And they all come for very different walks of life, and that's the way they're structured, the way they should work. Is they should have different experiences. So you've got, in this particular city, I've got a detective for a sheriff's department, I've got a school teacher, I've got an IT person with 3M, I've got a sergeant with the Minneapolis Police Department, and a retired. A lot of the cities in Minnesota are very different than out west. In many of them, the mayors also function as a city council member and are voting members. And the mayor is retired. So I'm dealing with very different, diverse backgrounds. So you've got to make sure that how do we appeal to all of them? How do we make sure that they don't say, hey, I guess it didn't work out, and we've now invested hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars in this community, which we've had experiences where we lose deals because of that. And that's part of the nature of doing business, is you lose some deals. So we've identified we've got areas we can't do anything with. We've identified that we could move our ponding. We've identified we could change our layout, our configuration. We've identified we can change density. We looked at it and said, okay, we know they don't want density in the back. We know they don't want attached. We know they don't want rentals. So if we're going to try to please the city council, we've got to keep with the general idea, but that means we're going to lose units. And if we lose units, I've got to pay significantly less. Sometimes tax increment financing is a tough sell to the community. Because the community, what they hear on tax increment financing is, the city's giving us developers who are all really rich and make lots of money, big tax breaks and giving all that money to us. That's what the community hears and feels. And I understand it. It's a real feeling that they have. But what it's doing is, one, schools generate zero property tax revenue. The city, the county, the school district, the state's getting zero money. If we could go in here and make a project that makes sense, and I can go in and put 60 units that all will average $300,000 in value in the assessment, that's going to generate a significant amount of tax revenue in the future. TIF is a temporary thing. Tax instrument financing could be a year, it could be up to 10 years, that they could take those monies to make the project successful, but as you look at it long term, it's going to benefit all the community because of that additional tax revenue. You've got to do a but-for analysis on TIF. If we don't do this, what's going to happen to the property? If we do this, what's going to be the benefit? So you've got to be able to prove that without the TIF, this doesn't work. And in this case, you've got a school that's generating no tax revenue. If they don't do something to buy the school, I think they bought it for $2.5 million, I believe was the number. I'm being recorded. I should have checked all these numbers. Now somebody's going to look this up. Because I was actually recorded when we presented to the city council. But I believe they bought it for $2.5 million, and I think our offer was $1.5 million for the property, if I remember right. So the city's now out $1 million. So they've already spent $1 million. They can't get that money back if they can get our $1.5 million. They've lost $1 million. But in the long run, they're going to generate significant tax revenue by doing this because of the homes that we put in. They're just going to delay that reward of getting those monies. Now you understand how TIF works. The city council understands how TIF works. But the person sitting at home that's watching the live stream of video doesn't get how it works. And they're angry because the city's giving us $1 million is what they see. Now I've got to go into the city to make this work. We've established it doesn't work how it is. If we've got to keep the general feel, we've got to get a significant reduction. So we've established, we went in and took everything you guys said was on our list of options. There was not a suggestion said that we did not consider. Do we look at attached product? Do we do pile drivings? Do we move our green space? Do we move our ponding? Do we increase density? Do we decrease? Everything you guys said was on the list. So we're looking at all this, and we slowly have to take them away. Well, if we do attach, the city's not going to approve it. So we're whittling these away, and we came up with, what if we can reconfigure it? So we went to the city staff and said, this is our problem. What are we going to do? How can we resolve this? You understand the city council. You understand what their needs are. You understand the community needs. In those discussions, as we were visiting with them, we discovered up at this top here, there's apartments in that area. We discovered that they've got a problem with stormwater, that they get frequent flooding. The city's built out. There's nowhere to do with it, and they just deal with it every few years that those parking lots will flood and some of the lower level houses will flood. This is really valuable knowledge for us. We've now got something. A few of you are grinning. Why are you grinning?
You're gonna give them some stormwater ponds right there. That way all the flood water will go into your stormwater ponds, and it solves their problem and it solves your problem.
It's exactly right. That's exactly what we heard. Your grin was exactly like my grin. So they explained this, said, wow, that was a really great meeting to have. Now, when you're working with all the stakeholders in this business, you need to understand what their needs are, and you need to meet their needs. You need to find out, how do we satisfy them? First, we were awarded the contract primarily because of what? Why did they decide between us and Pulte? Why did they choose Centra? You remember? Yes.
You gave them exactly what they were looking for.
We gave what they were looking for. I have a lot of respect for Pulte. They're a great company. They made a strategic error in this particular case. Pulte does a fantastic job in our market. Know many of them very well. They just made a strategic error in one case. And I'm sure Pulte is talking about my list of strategic areas, which are much longer than theirs in some other school today. So it was just an individual strategic error that we all make in business. We got lucky that we didn't make it and they happened to. We got the deal because we found out what the city needed. We were solving a problem. So we knew they didn't want certain densities. They did not want rentals. They did not want attached. Well, we've got another problem. What do? Find out what their potential needs are and how can we solve some of those. So exactly what you said, we're looking at it saying, okay, you've got a problem there, and as many of you suggested, move the pond over here. Well, this is perfect. This is great. It's a little more palatable for the citizens now that we have a solution for a problem in the community that already exists. It's a little more palatable now to say, you've got a problem, we're going to help solve it, and as part of that, we need to renegotiate the current terms of the contract. So we looked at it, and we said, we're going to do just that. And we came up with a new proposal. Go to our next slide, Tate. A few of you suggested something that looked similar to this, didn't you? We had ponding over here before. We had a cul-de-sac that came down. We had a road that went through here. Now, if you remember where all of our soil borings that we had the peat, they were predominantly in this area, and then we had our 7-foot one that was here. So we've now been able to isolate most of our problems to this area, with the exception of through right there. Now, if you remember, though, this area was only 7 feet. Excavating and recompacting 7 feet of soil is a fair bit different cost than excavating and recompacting 18 feet of soil. So we did this. We went to our engineers. We said, okay, if we have a proposal like this, what is this going to actually cost us? As you look at these lots, the LO stands for lookout. What that means, is everybody familiar with full basement product? Yes? Okay. So those of you that live in Las Vegas are familiar. So we've got a full basement. A walkout means at the back, the floor is at the same level as our dirt. The lookout means that our dirt is just below our windows. A full basement means somewhere between that level and the top of the back foundation, we've got dirt. So we said, okay, let's take this area, and instead of having to bring soils back in or do anything, let's just turn these into walkouts. So we're now going to be significantly lower of dirt that we don't have to worry about. We just need to remove the dirt. There is a market for some of this peat. People will use it as organic material to mix with other soils for topsoil, for gardens. So there is a market that we can get rid of it. At a cost, it's not free, you've got hauling costs, but there's a market. So we said, okay, let's put our walkouts around here by the ponds. they're also more desirable. The buyers prefer walkouts. They want to walk out right to the backyard. Lookouts are the next desirable, and then the full basements are last, because the basements, as many of you are probably familiar, feel dark and dingy. So said, okay, we're going to put our walkouts there. And then here, just because they're worth more money, we can move our dirt here. Most of this site's flat. We can take our dirt from these lookout areas over in here and move it and raise our roads up. And then we're having a slope, so now we have lookout. We can get a premium for those. If we have a full basement, the difference between a lookout and a full basement could be as much as $10,000 to $15,000 a house. So the cost to just shift that dirt doesn't cost that much, and our sales improve. So we turn these to lookout, we turn these to walkouts because of the soil conditions. And then here, because this is a very price point sensitive, the lookout versus a full basement isn't as critical. So most of these are all full basement in here. If you recall, this had green space in the middle, so we were able to shift our green space over to that area. With this proposal, because we took our green space here, as many of you suggested, we moved it to this area. We've now resolved their regional stormwater problem. We've now moved our stormwater over to here and took our green space, moved over there, so we've now got greater density in this area and replaced that green space with houses. All things you guys suggested. So we look at this, we say, okay, engineers, what's it going to cost? Because we still have 7 foot here. He says it's going to cost you $630,000 more than your original proposal, is what they said their estimates, cost estimates came up. So our cost to do this is $630 more. We had 63 units, I believe, in our original proposal. This one's got 61. So we've lost 2 units, and we have $630,000 more in costs. Our purchase price is $1.5 million. So if we say, what's the value of 2 houses plus 630, we're now in the neighborhood of just over 700, 750. So we're looking at a 50% discount. We didn't feel that was palatable. We weren't sure we could sell that to the city. We've lost 2 lots, but yet we need a 50% discount. It's the reality, but how do you explain that? How do you explain that when they're not familiar with the industry? They don't have the background knowledge that we all have. How do we explain we lost 2 lots, but I want $750,000? So we looked at our numbers and said, okay, what can we do differently? And we said, well, we could probably change this and that. We found $130,000 that we could change some things and have $130,000 in savings. So now we still have a $500,000 delta. So, well, how important is this project? I don't want to lose money. We don't need practice. We already know how to develop, so I don't need practice developing. So, well, 500 is what it is. We've got to take this to the city and get a $500,000 discount to make this thing work. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So we took this exact proposal to the city. Went to the city council, explained everything. One thing that most cities will have, depending on the region you're in, they'll call them a work session or a workshop. Different regions have, and that's a more informal setting where they're not sitting up on the stand and you know, very formal, and the city attorney's there, and you have these work sessions and you can throw ideas around and have more of a discussion around a table. So we said, can we get into your next work session and discuss this with the city council? You also don't, generally speaking, the news isn't there and the meetings aren't recorded. And so often people can feel a little bit more open in those settings. We said, can we get into your work session, the next work session, to where we can have a good open discussion about this? So we went to their next work session. We explained all the details that we all now know. We had the public works was there, the planner was there, that is now our advocate, because we're fixing a pretty significant problem they have on their own stormwater issues. So we've now got some advocates that work for the city as well that are there. So we took this and we said, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to design it. However, because of, and we brought them all the information in, there's going to be an increase. But we told them everything. We're eating $130,000 ourselves. So we're not asking you to take it all, but we can't do it without this. Anybody have an idea what happened? Here's a risk. You have, yes.
I was going to say, you're presenting them also with a solution to another problem. So I feel like they'd be a lot more willing to comply.
Absolutely. The risk you always run working in elected governments are election cycles. Wouldn't you know it that we presented this 2 weeks after we have a new city council member who has an axe to grind. So this city is an unusual city. They very much want to make things happen. They very much want to find solutions. They very much get it. They're a great city. We've got one council member. I hope this recording doesn't go to New Hope. Brother Everett's is cheering me in the back. And he says, you know what? That just sounds ridiculous. $1 million for this property and you're going to make so much money. I say no. He could be outvoted, but they decided to table it to try and help him feel better about it. This is not uncommon when you're dealing with elected officials. It's very common, actually. We will time approvals based on who's coming in and who's coming out very frequently. You know, there'll be times where you go, okay, I got a few votes against me, but I think they're getting elected out in 3 months. I'm going to delay my approvals until January when I've got new council members. Or the opposite. Everybody's on board. We got to rush this thing through because I don't know who's going to be in office at the next election. Fortunately, we reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd love to meet with you. We talked to him. He called some of his friends that were in the industry. He came back and said, you know what? It does make sense. I'm totally on board. I support this. So we went back in. We got a unanimous vote. Let's move forward. So we said, all right, we're going to move forward. Let's go to our next. So this is just after the roads were put in that you can now see. We've got 2 storm ponds here. We had to excavate a lot of dirt. One of the challenges is we had a lot of dirt to haul away. We're infill in the cities. And it's not like we're in Rexburg and we can just take it up the hill somewhere and spread it out. We had to haul it quite a ways, and that's part of the reason for the $630,000. So we've got a deeper pond, and then we've got a shallower pond, and that's for overflow. And we've designed it to now all of this is flowing into here, into a culvert that's now dumping into these. And then all of our stormwater is now going in there. So we've now fixed the regional problem. And we've taken this area and we planted it with native prairie grass and things to give it a natural feel. So as many of you suggested, what do? We're going to give some open space. We're going to give some park space. We're going to move our ponding. We're going to move all of those things to this area, which we did. This area, we usually hold very little, if any, water unless you're in a major storm event. This one's deep enough that it has water in it all the time, albeit very low. This, Tate might correct me on it, I think we could handle, before it would overflow, I think this pond could probably handle 15 to 18 feet worth of water. So to handle this area, it's a significant amount of water it can handle. But then it's got an overflow that it then hits this one, which then has an overflow and we flood everybody that lives down here. But our people are taken care of. That's the important thing. So we went in here. We've got the 2 different product types. You can see these narrower 2 products here. We've got a bigger product. We said, well, we need to be able to show both of them. So let's throw 2 model homes in. This is our primary model home. This is our secondary model home. I don't know if you can see it very well. In Minnesota, similar to Rexburg. One thing that's unique, when I moved to Minnesota, I'd never seen this. I don't have experience all over the country, but I've got experience in quite a few markets in the country. Minnesota does very infrequently do they do concrete driveways. Most driveways in Minnesota are asphalt. And if your ground is frozen, you better not put either one of them down or you're going to have problems. But there are ways that you can get your ground to thaw it out. You can put blankets on it. There's things you can do. Pour your concrete. As you guys are probably aware, there's additives you can put in, blankets on. There's a lot you can do and still pour concrete in relatively cold temperatures. In Minnesota, we pour footings all through the year. We stop pouring footings. The city won't let us pour footings if it gets below, I believe, -5. But we've got ways to continue to pour concrete as low as -5. Now, there are weeks, 3 weeks ago, we stopped building houses for about a week and a half because we got below -5 every day. So you guys can all feel our pain. But you'll dig the hole, you'll get your footings down, you'll get your walls up, you'll backfill, and you'll do that in a matter of a day and a half, so that way you get the frost protection very quickly. So driveways, because we do asphalt, there's not even a way to get the frost out. and asphalt batch plants. Minnesota, they fudge it. I think the national, the problem is I've got too much faculty in the back. They're going to start saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I think the national rules are 55 and climbing is what they say for laying asphalt. I'm looking at Brother Everts because I think he should know, but he's giving me that eye. I think it's 55 and climbing. In Minnesota, they fudge that all the time. We are so grateful for that. But to lay your asphalt 55 and climbing, that's a pretty small window in Minnesota. We have road restrictions. This is a fun thing in Minnesota. We have such a high water content in our soils because of the amount of rain we get. We get a lot of rain, and it's awesome because it's beautiful and green, and we have a lot of lakes. But because of that rain, we have a high water content. So as things start thawing out in the spring, they have what's called road restrictions, and if your truck can only have so much weight in it. So in the spring, our concrete trucks come out partially full. Our lumber trucks come out partially full, and they'll do multiple trips because of the road restrictions. They can't have so much weight. So asphalt doesn't come until road restrictions are lifted, and by the time road restrictions are lifted, we're at 55. So through the winter, when we build houses, they've got no driveways, they've got no sidewalks. And so if you can see, I don't know if you can see, these are wood ramps. So we built wood ramps to the houses. That's how they get in their house all through the winter. And then we prioritize in May or June when we've got asphalt, we prioritize. We say, okay, this house is first because they moved in October. We need their driveway first, and then we need to put their sidewalk in, and then we put their landscaping in. And so we do that. And so when we open models, these models happen to open in December, and so we worked off of temporary platforms. So we built both of those, and now we're going along, and you can see we started a couple of spec homes here. That was a pre-sale. That was a pre-sale. They're all on temporaries with no driveway. Let's go to the next one. This is what it looks like today. We started this community, well, it would have been, we started actively selling in January of 15. This is our marketing map, so if it's got a red dot, that means it's sold. And it's missing 4 dots that they sold this week. And it's because we looked for a solution to a problem. We involved the stakeholders. This is our best-selling community right now. We involved the stakeholders and said, what are the problems that we need to solve for you? We've got our 2 models here. You can see we've got a lot of people that really love the wetlands. So who was it that said, hey, if we could have a product, we can increase their value because of that open space? You're exactly spot on. We put premiums on all of these lots right here. A fairly significant premium because they're backed up to some beautiful space. We will do that often. You'll take your pricing commensurate with what is the product that you're putting in there and what does the area look like. So we were able to put premiums here. The reason you see these in a row, they're very narrow. So when you're excavating, if we can do house in a row, we can excavate, put the dirt on the neighboring lot, put the foundation in, backfill. If we do this lot and then this lot, when we come in and do that one, I've got to now move all that dirt to another lot, which costs a lot more money. And if we just go in a row, so when the buyers come in, we said, we're going this way, this way, this way, and this way. So depending on when you want to move in, depends on which lot you're going to buy. We also did that because they're the premium lots. The CVS drive-through window's right here, so you can listen to that all night if you live here. These are facing a busy road. This is on a corner. Nobody wants to live on 2 corners. And so our experience is you want to sell your product that is the most desirable first, because what will happen is somebody will come in and say, I'll wait until that one's available, and they just don't buy it all. But if the most desirable ones are gone, you don't have a choice. If you want to live in here, you're going to buy it. So our experience is you start with the most desirable product first and work your way out, because you build up momentum. The reason we sold 4 houses last week is there's momentum, and people are realizing if I want to live in this area, I better hurry up and do something. So we now have people that have other houses to sell that are finding solutions to that so they don't lose out on the opportunity. When you do the tax increment financing, you've got to propose to the city, and part of what the state requires is if you go the but-for analysis, you're going through and you're saying, what is the benefit to the city? How much money is the city going to generate? So we had to do some analysis that you've got to go through and you say, okay, what is our average cost going to be? These units we said will sell for on average of $260,000. These units will sell for about $320,000. And I would rather underpromise and overdeliver, because one of the things that help us be successful, if you remember, the reason we got called here is because in a neighbor city we did a product that we were successful at. So you don't want to oversell yourself, because it might get you the deal today, but it's going to hurt you tomorrow. And you want to do that with a buyer, with your inspectors, everybody you deal with. You want to make sure that you underestimate or you're right on. But if you overestimate, it's going to really hurt you no matter who you're dealing with. So we underestimated, and we also said we think this project will take us 4 years to build out. This product, we've been very fortunate, is averaging about $290,000. This product's averaging about $420,000. So we're significantly higher, and we're on pace to do it in less than half the time that we had said. So we've hit it. The city council obviously is very pleased. Is our next video? We've now, just for fun, have a video of what the actual marketing is that the city we produce for the city, and then for marketing, we'll just show you of what does the community look like a little bit.
Parkview is an exciting community with a mix of single-family homes and detached townhomes located in New Hope. Parkview has many options when it comes to building a home that's right for you. From 2-story to Rambler single-family homes with floor plans ranging from 1,400 square feet to just over 3,300 square feet. Conveniently located, this city is proud of its excellent schools and variety of recreational opportunities. Enjoy a nice swim at the Milton C. Hansi outdoor pool, golf, softball leagues, and tennis. Central Homes is locally owned and operated and recognized as one of the top home builders in the Twin Cities. Visit our website to learn more about the Central Homes difference.
Maybe I should have shown that at the beginning, but that would have been a giveaway that we figured out how to resolve it. But you saw that last drone video of how close the downtown was. So these are a little bit unique. When you do these infill products, you've got to think outside the box a little bit. We've got just a few minutes left. Are there questions specifically to land development or this specific case that anybody has?
Was there a point where you just wanted to walk away from it, where it's just too much?
Yes, we did contemplate that when we saw the first ones. It was a real consideration. If we have liability insurance, liability is if somebody trips and falls on our project and gets hurt, it's insurance. It also important in this case if our house starts to collapse because of the soils we're covered. However, if you have a house start collapse, it could be the end of a company. And so we really looked hard. That's a great question, because we looked at that and said, do we want to take the risk? Is there potential unknowns we don't know about? You know, we're putting a lot of faith into somebody else's study and testing of what the soils look like. And we did, and ultimately the knowledge we have and then a little bit of our experience and instincts, we said, let's move forward. But we thought long and hard about killing it and saying, let's be out the 20 grand and let's move on. So another, yeah.
So within Central Homes, how many minds were coming together to come up with solutions for this? We're talking 10 people, or I'm just curious, like, what all goes into something like this?
I think that's a great question. You've got to be careful. You get too many people sometimes and you don't get anywhere because you have too many ideas. The other problem is you get too few of people and it's tough that maybe you're not seeing everything. We are actually a rather small company, so we don't have a lot of minds to draw from. In this case, there was just 3 of us. You know, there was 3 of us that were making the decisions. We also reached out to the experts, the engineers, and asked them, what do you think, the soils, all of those guys. But in this case, it was just 3 of us. I think I saw a hand. Yes?
So you have 2 model homes. Are all of the other homes that exact model?
No, in these type of communities, we'll offer multiple houses. But it's, you know, here's the 6 houses we offer, and that's what you get. However, in this subdivision, you could have done virtually anything as long as it meets. It's more difficult here because your limitations. In this particular product, the houses are only 28 feet wide. And so there's not a lot of different floor plans, and so typically that type of product you're going to be production. However, back here, you could have virtually done anything you want because they're typical lot sizes. Yes?
Was there any time delay with trying to think this all out?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. Because of the weather that we deal with in Minnesota, and at Rexburg would be the same, you can't develop throughout the year. We will move equipment on site in the winter when there's no road restrictions. So that way, as soon as the thaw comes out, we can start working and we don't have to wait for road restrictions. And then asphalt batch plants shut down in October. So you've got a pretty narrow window, May and October, to be able to develop. In this particular case, to your point, because of the delays, we discovered these problems. We actually got delayed almost 2 years because they could not do the soil studies appropriately in January, so they had to wait. Well, once we discovered that, then we had to redesign everything and get the city's approval. So there was costly delays. In our case, we hadn't put any money other than due diligence. So, any other questions? Last question.
So how long did it take to do the whole project, like overall time frame?
We're not done yet.
Not done?
In this case, we got all the road, asphalt, excavating. We started in about July and we got asphalt down in October. Then we immediately started the houses, and our houses take us about 90 days to build. So, great question. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. A lot of fun. This is something new for me. I've taught a whole lot of church classes. I have never taught a college class. So I appreciate you guys being the guinea pig. If you have any questions, we're going to be hanging out. Love to visit with you more if you have any development type questions. And thank you, Brother Everett. We'll turn it back to you.
I'd just like to thank Dale and his group for coming. They really have a great operation going. I've known Dale for 2 months now, but I knew his brother for about 2 years, and just great people. So we're excited to have them. It's not too late to sign up for interviews as well, so just don't forget that. Next week's seminar we'll have NRT group coming. They're based out of Texas, but they have 9 locations throughout the United States and over 500 employees. So looking forward to that. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.